Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to CI Chit Chat. Mitchell with you, and I've got my guest, the most special guest, right, Carolyn? The most special guest, Carolyn King, our VP of Operations. Carolyn's been on before, but I'll loop her in here in just a little bit. We got a wide array of different things we want to talk about here today. All kinds of different stuff happening within 45Z and CI. So want to keep the conversation going with you all. So. These chit chats we do every week. They end up on our YouTube page and on the Topsoil podcast. So check out any of our content there if you would like, or share this with other folks that need to know what's going on with CI. That's what we talk about with CI, carbon intensity. We've got a whole suite of services that we are bringing to the table, including now running free CI scores on TopSoil.ag. We've integrated the 2023 GREET feedstock calculator that was developed by the U.S. Department of Energy. We're helping make it very easy for farmers to get that score. We've got a brand new, super simple how-to video showing how to get your CI score. That'll be getting pushed out and stuff. I don't know if it is yet. If so, maybe we'll get it put in the chat here. But I literally recorded myself going front to back on how to run a CI score and the total, like starting an account, running a CI score, like filling out your farm profile, running a score, and playing with your practices. And the whole video is 6 minutes long, like the full thing, start to finish. Now I run it in my version, right? Keeping it simple and don't have to be too detailed with just run a base CI score. But you can go and get your CI score for free, topsoil.ag, just to see where you're at in general, and join our billion bushel challenge. We got a lot of farmers that need these scores, and I'm excited to be running them for free. In reality, what we've got to do is we've got to prove that our CI is our CI. So, and what I mean by that is every bushel that we are harvesting has a carbon footprint. Every bushel has a carbon intensity score, and we need to prove what our score is because our scores and our data is valuable in the emerging 45Z tax credit driven market for low carbon biofuels. But you can't just have hearsay. You can't just say, oh, yeah, sure, I did this, 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 and this. And sure, here's my score. It's going to be legit here because we're talking about submitting this data all the way through to the IRS, and they're going to be auditing and being found to be fraudulent is going to be a bad, bad deal. So we are being aggressive and getting farmers through verification and getting a third party audited to make sure that what we are saying happened, make sure that it happened. And it's not just us saying that it happened, but an actual accredited third party verifier as well. So Carolyn, you've been leading the charge on getting the data over to our verifier. We've been working with the eco engineers. They're based here in Iowa, and things are moving right along. But maybe explain a little bit on like what is going on with the data submittal for verification and kind of current status there.
Mhm. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. The data submittal has been a lot of work. It's all hands on deck around here at Continuum Ag. I've been trying to get Mitchell all week to do some with us because I think it would be good for him to test it out. But it is a lot of work, and I want to be super honest and transparent about that because I do think that people for a while either just didn't realize or maybe they were in denial like myself about how much effort it was actually going to take to get this stuff across the finish line. But essentially the process and the way it works is when a farmer signs up for CI certification through us here at Continuum Ag, we get them paired up with an agronomist or a data coordinator, and that person will be their main point of contact throughout the entire process. And all we're trying to do here at Continuum is make sure that you have every single pass that goes across the field documented and entered into our activities tool in Topsoil, and then also that you have supporting evidence to go with that. That supporting evidence looks like shape files or invoices or as applied maps, things like of that nature for the most part. And when we get to the end of the growing season, we have to match up every activity that you entered into topsoil with that piece of evidence to make sure that everything's there and you have proof for everything that you say you did. So that's what we're going through right now is like matching
Mhm.
everything up, reconciling that information, making sure that it's all there so that when we send it to our third-party verifier, eco engineers, they don't have to come back to us and say, you're missing all of these things. So trying to make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row and get everything put together. We are getting all of that data for this first tranche submitted to ECO here this month still. So chugging along, if you submitted stuff for tranche one, just know we are going through it. We've got a lot of data and a
Mhm.
lot of people to sort through, but it's happening. We're getting there.
A lot of stuff. Yeah. So essentially it's farmer gets signed up and that's on a like a field by field basis.
Yep.
So then we have to integrate what happened on that field and essentially log the data, right? So utilizing Topsoil and utilizing our activities tool to document the practices that you did. And of course, then those practices are what we plug in to run the CI score field by field, which now that we're starting to get some yield data back in. Now we can actually run the final CI scores. So the faster we can get yield data in, faster we can have all this wrapped up and final CI scores calculated and submitted over. But so we got to document the practices of what happened, and then, like you were saying, Carolyn, provide the evidence to back it up. So, and basically, going through this process with the third party verifier, obviously, it's something that at Continuum we've never done before. We've been involved in lots of other people's carbon programs or, in carbon offset and inset programs, but we've always just collected some of the data, sent it over to them, then they submit it to the third party verifier. Now, in this case, we are submitting the data to the third party verifier and working through the process of, all right, what is sufficient evidence to suffice an audit? And going through these full ISO standards and everything as well. We still don't have all the final rules from the USDA or from the Department of Treasury. And I'll get to that here in a second. But the at this point we basically have to say, all right, every single activity that happened, prove it the best that we can. So Carolyn, what do you see in there, and maybe speak to your recommendation for farmers, and obviously now we're in the thick of it, right? So what's done is done. Farmers have already submitted their data to us if they were enrolled so far, but more so speaking about what should they be thinking about if they're not enrolled in a verification program right now. But obviously, we anticipate everyone's going to have to do this here in the very near future. So, what is that going to look like?
Yeah, yeah. So this year, because we don't have any rules yet, we have been super stringent on like, we need shape files. We need like the best data that we can possibly get. We know that in the future, that will still be the top tier is like the shape files of each activity that you're doing. So I think my big plug right now is make sure that as you are planting cover crop this fall or putting fertilizer on or doing some of these other activities that you double check that your monitor is working, that it's tracking things appropriately, that it is set up with the product name in there. Fertilizer is not just fertilizer. We got to know if it was anhydrous or something else. So just really double check that everything is flowing through the monitor the right way. That's the biggest piece is just having that accurate data. If you get us shape files, we will be really, really happy and we will likely not have to bother you again. If it's something else, we know that we're going to have to come back to you again at some point and say, hey, this is great, but we need this other piece of information or we need, another thing that supports that and proves it. So my big thing right now is just make sure you're taking care of business when you get into the tractor and make sure everything is like flowing correctly to JD Ops or climate or whatever you're using because the shape files are the biggest piece that just really works well.
Yeah, so like shape files and an actual as applied map for each
Yep.
application, that's kind of ideal.
Hmm.
But other things we're also looking at is receipts. So
Yep.
like receipt of from the seed, the fertilizer, the cover crop receipt, manure, the pesticides that you're using, the fuel that you're using. So keeping track of those receipts is another piece of evidence. Even taking pictures and stuff when you're out there, take a photo because every photo that you take, like on a smartphone, It's geotagged and time stamped. So take a couple extra pictures while you're out there doing different activities. It's one way that you can remind yourself when it happened as well, that you could go back and look at when you took that photo and be able to then make the activities documentation easier on yourself as well. But that could suffice as some evidence for what you did, especially in some of these applications that are hard to document, or maybe you don't have maybe you're not mapping that application, right? So maybe it's for manure or spreading fertilizer or something like that. Maybe you're not mapping it. Well, take a picture, gather the receipts, do other things as well, especially if you don't have a shapefile. Like it's going to take multiple other pieces of data. That shapefile and the actual, that's kind of the best proof, right? Digital proof that it actually happened straight out of the tractor or the combine or the sprayer or whatever. That's best case scenario. But if you don't have that, bring in some of those other items. But it's kind of all over the place on you guys' side, though, Carolyn, right?
Yeah.
Of uh, when it's different for every single farmer, and that's what makes all this tough.
Right. Yeah, it's never the same. I think the biggest thing to be thinking about this fall too is tillage. That seems to be the one that the fewest number of people are actually tracking that via JD Ops or Climate or something
Yeah.
else. So just make sure that when you jump in the tractor to do some tillage, that you are taking a picture of that stuff and finding another way to document it too. It's really hard to get evidence after the fact.
Yeah.
And definitely hard, like especially now, a year later almost than from some of this stuff happening, like it's really, really hard to figure out how we're going to prove that. So just be thinking about it all year long. Every time you get in the tractor, think about Continuum Ag and what data you need to have.
Think about making Carolyn's life easier so it doesn't have to track you down.
That's right.
Um,
Yeah.
and obviously, going forward here, we're continuing to automate, right? And that's really what this is going to take. It's going to be automation, connecting these existing data platforms, pulling all together in a simple, consistent manner to make verification easier. Because as we're thinking about scaling this up to billions of bushels of grain annually, it is going to be a lot of work here. And obviously, we're trying to lead the charge there, and there's a lot of unknowns. So we've reported to you all that there's been a couple of USDA feedback sessions that have occurred already, and today is the final one. I know a lot of you have gotten on. Let's see if I can do this. A lot of you have been on some of those chats in the past. Let's see. Hopefully that worked. I think you can click that link that I just put in the chat there, and you can register for today's webinar. What is it today? Noon? Yeah, noon central here today. The final feedback session from the USDA. And if you would like to speak, go right ahead. We have spoken our piece a couple different times on behalf of Continuum and on behalf of our individual farms and stuff as well. And really, our message has been USDA, Department of Energy, Department of Treasury, hey, use the GREET model to calculate the on-farm carbon intensity scores, the CI scores of the feedstocks, utilize that GREET model for the purposes of 45Z. It's already readily available. It's not perfect, but it's good enough for what we need, and let's improve it in future renditions later. But we have 2.5 months till this thing starts. Like, gosh darn, people, like we can't wait until every single thing is perfect, or else we're gonna be sitting here 10 years from now still with nothing. Like if we wait for perfect, like come on, we got to get this thing out, utilize the GREET model, and don't go with some kind of bundled approach or some kind of watered down thing that doesn't encourage farmer innovation and deters a lot of people from participating, especially if they go with a bundled approach and just a bucketed amount of CI point reduction. That would be really bad. And what I mean by that is if they say, yeah, if you do cover crop and no-till, we'll give you 7 points of reduction. And if you're stabilizers, cover crop, and no-till, we'll give you 10 points of reduction. And that's exactly what they did with the 40B rules. And that's what I'm referring to. But those 10 points of reduction, like it doesn't hardly move the needle. It's not enough dollar value to make it worth it. The only folks who would participate are people that are already doing it, and it's not enough money to encourage practice change. So it doesn't really move the needle. Like it doesn't really accomplish anything if the system isn't set up in a manner that encourages new folks to come to the table, new folks to participate in these programs. And that's why we're advocating for utilizing the actual GREET model. Therefore, a farmer can go and identify what is their score today, and then they can choose the practices that they want to implement that are best for their farm and each individual field that move the needle the way that they want to move it. And some of these practices are going to be tough to make work on each individual field, at least for folks that are new to this and here at the beginning. And I get it, like that's fine. So that's why we don't like bucketing people into having to use a bundle of practices. Instead, let farmers be innovative, give them the scoreboard, give them the point system, the GREET model, and let them figure out what is the best outcome for each individual farm. So that's really what we are advocating for. What's been amazing to me, the feedback or in those couple feedback sessions, is almost everybody is advocating for this exact same thing. Almost everybody's saying use the GREET model, no bundles. You'll hear, if you're on the meeting today, you'll hear people say no bundles over and over. And there's a reason that they're saying that, because there's definitely still indication from USDA that they want to do bundles. And we and so many people from ag are saying no bundles, no bundles, use the GREET model. So um, mostly good consensus in the feedback that's going on, but we got to keep beating that drum, or else I really worry this stuff is going to fall apart. If it's a bundled approach and you don't really reward people for making any changes, and some of these practices they can be tough to adopt and they can be risky. And we've got to reward folks correctly. The other piece that a lot of folks actually are uh, talking about is the concept of a book and claim program here, where a farmer can get their verified CI score, and then they can sell that verified CI score to anybody through a marketplace like the one that we've developed, or just connecting, their verified CI score to, like I said, to anybody, rather than only having to work with somebody that you can sell your physical corn and sell your data to, which would really be restrictive on a local basis and could shake things up, for grain that normally would go straight to livestock, or grain that would go to an elevator. It could really alter some of those local dynamics and stuff. So that's why there's a lot of advocacy for book and claim. It would streamline the process. It would make this much more scalable. It would level the playing field. So we're advocating for it too, at least in the short term here, to get the program off the ground. Book and claim would make it a lot easier, more traceable, more simple. So, but anyway, would definitely encourage everyone to listen in on that feedback session today. But Carolyn, one of the things I was just talking about there is, farmers. We're advocating that farmers should be able to get their score, and we're doing that for free on TopSoil.ag. So use the CI score, and then the farmer gets to choose what's best for them to implement on their farm. And where we started this company was doing consulting and helping farmers to adopt soil health practices like cover crops and no-till and strip-till, and improving their fertilizer management and all that good stuff. And that's what got us into the CI thing, is that we've been helping farmers improve and monetize and quantify their soil health since I started this thing back in 2015. And now we're putting a CI score on it. Now there's an opportunity to monetize, but we still have that, what we call the Regen Roadmap, our consulting program, to help farmers who want some consulting, want some handholding as they go along this journey. Carolyn, you lead that, within the operations department. Maybe speak to the Regen Roadmap here a little bit.
Yeah, so I'll go at it from the CI angle, because I do really think that CI will be the thing that gets the mass adoption of soil health practices to happen. So the Regen Roadmap is essentially our service that helps farmers implement these soil health practices. The best way to reduce your CI score, the way to do it the fastest, is by using cover crops, reducing tillage, and reducing your fertilizer usage. And the Regen Roadmap can really help with two of those things. And then, of course, we have a service to help with the third one as well. But our whole plan with the Regen Roadmap is just to step by step walk farmers through adopting soil health practices and making sure that they do it successfully. we've seen time and time again, and I'm sure that everyone on the call has heard some horror story or has one of their own. I know Mitchell does. He's shared it lots of times before, but
Yeah.
a horror story of, a time that you tried cover crops and it was like an absolute total failure. Something went wrong, and we're trying to mitigate that with the Regen Roadmap. So
Yeah.
we've got a ton of experience between Mitchell and I and all the rest of the agronomists on the team. We've got a whole network of farmers that we work with that have been doing these practices to varying degrees. And what we're trying to do is just bring all of that together to give the farmer the best kind of soil health transition and experience possible. So we essentially sit down with the farmer month by month and go through what's happening right now, what do we need to prepare for, what do we need to be planning for in terms of like implementing a cover crop with rates and species and planting plans, all the way through cover crop termination. What do I do about tillage? Like the whole gamut. If it's
Mhm.
involved in your soil health practices, that's what the Regen Roadmap's for.
Yeah, so we're doing the consulting, but working through kind of a written, documented plan of, all right, here's what you did in the past, but now here's an actual game plan. Let's get it in writing. Let's be on the same page, and then let's check in on a scheduled, monthly meeting. But obviously, we're always on call too to help farmers out along that journey. What this boils down to, we've been in the soil health space since 2015, and what we've identified is that for more farmers to adopt soil health minded practices, they need to overcome the economic risk of change and the logistic risk of change. So the logistics is the how to. How do I adopt a cover crop? What species? How do I change my fertilizer? How am I going to kill this stuff? All that. So the logistics is really what we help and facilitate and consult on with the Regen Roadmap. The economic risks, I think now we're finally, with
Mhm.
45Z and the carbon intensity opportunity, now there's finally a big enough potential carrot that the economic risks of change are really being overcome, right? And that's why we're seeing such interest in farmers coming to the table because the carrot is way bigger than anything that we've seen before. But even chasing a big carrot, if you don't know what you're doing and you lose a bunch of yield or you screw stuff up, it could cause a lot of headache and it could really rip into the potential upside financial opportunities. So that's what I wanted to just remind everyone that we do, offer those consulting services and can help you out if you need, if you need help with how to adopt these practices. And a lot of folks are in the heat of it right now. So make sure you get the cover crop out there. Think about reducing your tillage. Think about optimizing your fertility program because what you're doing this fall is going to impact your score next spring. So hit us up if you need any help there. Um, there was a couple questions stuff that came in here too. So
Yeah.
one of the question coming from Michigan, any news on other crops that aren't for biofuel being included in CI for the future? So there's been a lot of advocacy for utilizing additional crops and additional feedstock in these USDA feedback sessions. So a lot of push for expanding the GREET model and getting other crops included. Now, this would all still be for 45Z and would still be for biofuels. However, it still speaks to expanding the GREET model. We know right now that they are working on adding canola and winter wheat to the GREET model. Today, the GREET model is just corn, soybeans, sorghum, rice, and Brazilian sugarcane. So today, the GREET model is very restricted. They're adding canola and wheat and anticipate that they'll add other crops in the future, but it's going to take time. It's not going to be here anytime soon. It's not going to be in the next coming just couple years. Things that they will add first would be some other, winter oilseed crops like pennycress, canola, winter camelina, those kind of things that could be utilized for 45Z. Because keep in mind, the GREET model is developed by the US Department of Energy. So they are going to focus on crops that can be utilized for energy production because that's their whole department, right? So the GREET model is going to focus on energy for sure, maybe expand into other stuff in the future, but again, a long ways out. So if your crop is included in the GREET model today or in the near term, though, the crops that I just mentioned, we are able to get you your CI score on a per bushel basis. Well, the score that we show in topsoil is with the units of kilograms of CO2 equivalent per MMBTU. And we do that because that's the CI score that is specifically named in the Inflation Reduction Act and in the rules around 45Z. So that's why we display the units exactly the way the government says of how we need to display the units. However, the GREET model spits out the data on a per bushel basis. So if you want to start working towards your low carbon grain going into low carbon pork or low carbon chickens or milk or whatever, we do have that data on a per bushel basis. So I think the opportunities to utilize the GREET model beyond biofuels is a tremendous opportunity. That's why I'm so bullish on this whole thing and thinking long term and developing all these systems that we're developing because it's going to go beyond 45Z. But it's just that we're still a ways away. And again, the GREET model is not perfect. I would love for, farmer innovation to play in and to include some of these other crops. And we've been playing with camelina on our farm for 2 years. We did mustard, a canola, 4 years ago or something like that. We grew some 3, 4 years ago. So like, I mean, I would love to get some of these other crops to work because we've been experimenting with them ourselves. But they just aren't part of the GREET model today. So you can play with them, try them small scale, see agronomically how some of these different things would work for your operation, but just know you can document the practices and you can utilize topsoil to document your practices. And then when the science is there, we can run a CI score. So a lot more innovation needed there. But Carolyn, anything else you want to speak to on that? And
I think the biggest thing with that is we don't know when all of that stuff is coming. So it's good to be prepared for it and like get your initial CI score. But I would say do not expect that we'll know all that stuff even within the next year
yeah.
because there's so much changing and like so much that needs to come out with 45Z already. That hopefully they can just like get the groundwork laid for the rules as soon as possible, and then we can fill in a lot of these gaps later. But we all know that that's been a very slow process. I feel like we've been saying that we want to get the rules for at least a year at this
Oh, yeah.
point. So I'm not expecting it to be anytime soon.
No, no, at least some of these modifications. And
Right.
at this point, it's 2.5 months until 45Z is starting. There just simply isn't time to add all these different things. And it's unfortunate, but it's just the reality of the speed at which this stuff has to go. So in the future, it'll be expanded. We'll improve the accuracy. What we are advocating for is for transparency there and for collaboration between the Department of Ag, Department of Energy, farmers. Hey, let's work together to improve these models over time. And now farmers are going to need to be compensated for their data and for any additional time and effort and going through all this stuff. But hey, if we can collaborate to improve these models, let's do it. We'd love to help facilitate that as well. So those conversations are already going on. We keep stressing that over and over. So again, would definitely voice your opinion with the USDA here today. Give them that feedback of hey, there's a big opportunity here within this crop, and make sure that's on their radar. But just I would encourage to say, hey, but we need the rules out, knowing that there's not enough days left between now and January 1 to go and add a completely new crop or make major modifications to the GREET model. So get it out today, make it make it work for the majority of folks, and then let's get right to work expanding and making it better for the future years. So, and all you can do on your farm is document every nitty gritty thing. That's really the theme of this whole session as we work towards wrapping up. Is all this stuff takes a lot of data. The cleaner your data, the more digitized it is, the more streamlined it is. It's going to make it easier on you, the farmer, or you, the agronomist. And it's definitely going to make it easier on our team as well. And therefore, just less headache for everybody, more accuracy for everybody, streamline the whole process so that this can really go and scale. So I'd also encourage in wrapping up, like if you aren't in CI certification right now, make sure that you are going back through your whole 2024 season, get your practices documented, If you've been sitting on the sideline, that's totally fine. I get it. And when the time is right, we hope that you jump into this and are ready to rock and roll. But get your ducks in a row now. It'll make things a lot easier. And like we said, we're implementing practices for 2025, here right after harvest. So document that stuff now, keep really good records, keep your receipts, take photos, get good shape files that are clean, and make sure that your monitoring stuff is working, like Carolyn said, because it's going to make it a lot easier on everybody. And, we can collect that data over time, starting now and are starting soon. We're not necessarily hitting the go switch on 2025 yet, but we'll get some of the rules brought in and then be able to hit the go switch. But document everything that you're doing. That's really what this all boils down to, and that's going to be true just from here on out, whether it be for 45Z and biofuels or any other sustainability program, any other carbon thing. They all take this type of data, and that's why we've built the things we've built within our topsoil software. And again, remind everyone, I built this for myself, for my own family farm, for my own data management. I needed to make sure that my records are clean and in a consistent, safe place where I know that they are protected. I know they aren't ended up in the hands of anybody that could do something that could be wrongful with it. And I know that this data is going to have to go through these type of third-party audits and stuff. So, built it to try to make some money on my own farm. And, now, of course, we've got it available for anybody else can use it as well. So, anyway, Carolyn, any final parting thoughts here?
Nope, I think you said it all. Just keep all of your data organized and together and get it as clean as possible. Make sure you're thinking about the things that'll impact your CI score for 2025.
Yep.
And that's about it. We're out of time.
Yep.
I'm
Out of
not
time.
shocked.
Maybe we'll see folks at noon and be safe out there with harvest. We will see you next week back here on the Chit Chat. We do have a couple different webinars that are coming up as well. So be watching those, but we'll see you next Tuesday back here on the Chit Chat. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Hi.